Hello and welcome to my video. Today we're going to look at how to do fluorescence on a Zeiss Axiovert 200 inverted fluorescence microscope. We have two different frames. This is a manual frame and this is a motorized frame. For purposes of fluorescence, there's no difference between these two frames, so I only wanted to create one video to cover both of these models. The motorized frame just has some extra buttons to control. For example, on the motorized, you could press buttons to control the reflector cube turret, but you can also rotate it manually. Here's the manual version, and we're just rotating it manually. And also, whenever we rotate these, I have Dappy, Fitzy, Rotamine, Tritzy labeled. I have position number 1 is just going to be for bright field. There's a white marking. You want to align that with the filter cube so you know where you're at. In this case, this is going to be bright field. And both of these frames are going to have the FL button. This is an on-off button. It's actually a shutter. You can't see it because it's actually internal to this frame, internal to the light path. It's built in back in here. But it opens and closes the shutter, allowing the light to either pass or to be blocked. And it's normally off. So you are going to have to press the FL button to get any fluorescence to work. If you're like, what happened? I see no fluorescence. Well, did you open up your shutter? Anyway, since everything else is the same on both of these models, the motorized and the manual, this being the manual version, let's concentrate only on the motorized. To get fluorescence, everything has to be just right. If you've got some settings off, if you've got something open and closed wrong, you're not going to get fluorescence, or your fluorescence image quality is going to be poor. Fluorescence can be really frustrating. Even I sit at these sometimes for a long time trying to figure out what am I doing wrong. I keep looking at it, trying to get the specimen, trying to get a fluorescence, and I can't. So that can be frustrating, but you just have to bear with it. That's the nature of the game. Let's take a look at the light sources. First of all, this is an upper light source. This is the halogen, and this is the upper arm. And we've got the light condenser. This is for transmitted light. It has nothing to do with fluorescence. This is fluorescence. I can even pull this back. This is a tilt back carrier. I can pull it totally back out of the way. I could even put a black sheet here. I could cover this up. And actually that can be helpful because sometimes you get ambient light coming in and you want to cover this. And let's take a look at the illuminator. So we have an HBO 100 illuminator. This is the most commonly used. And let's look at our centering knobs. What you're going to do is you're going to take a 3mm Allen head and you're going to center the bulb with, here's 5 different openings using your 3mm. This external box is the power supply. Sometimes these will show the numbers of hours that your bulb has been in use, and sometimes they have a battery in there. That battery goes out, and sometimes we don't even use it. These bulbs are rated for 200 hours. They need to be inspected and replaced when they start to get brown. So the best way to do this is to just occasionally open it up, take a look at your bulb. If it's looking really bad, burned out, black, you need to replace it. If it looks pretty clear, you're in good shape. Another thing, be careful please about fluorescence light sources. Always wear safety glasses. I don't have it turned on right now, so I'm not wearing my glasses, but always wear safety glasses. UV light can be really harmful to your eyes. They can burn your retina in your eyes, and you don't even know it. Also, these bulbs can explode if they've been used past their service life. And they can also explode if you turn this on and off too quickly. For any HBO lamp, just like any other high-intensity discharge lamp, you have to take care about turning it on and off. When you turn it on, You need to leave it on for at least 30 minutes until it reaches a constant temperature before turning it off. Turning it off prematurely can damage the bulb. And once it's turned off, you need to wait another 30 minutes to cool it down before you turn it back on. You usually, also, another thing, you usually have to leave these on for about 30 minutes before you're going to get good images. If you try 5 minutes on and you try to look at your specimen, you're probably not going to see anything very good. These bulbs have a wavelength emission spectra that's dependent on the temperature, and it does take a while for this temperature to reach that constant temperature and create that spectra that is going to give you the right fluorescence. Really, we're talking about excitation light when we're dealing with this illuminator exciting our fluorescent specimen. Most researchers are going to leave these on. If they're working on them occasionally throughout the day, they're just going to leave them on the whole day long. They're not going to try to turn it on and then turn it off and then another hour or two later turn it back on. No, just leave it on the whole day. That's the best way to do it. It's also going to be easier on the bulb. Another thing, these do they do generate some ozone, this high intensity discharge bulb. So I like to have a little ventilation in the room. I would not operate this in a sealed up room where I don't have any ventilation. So next thing I want to do is I want to take a look at the HBO 100 lamp housing. So use a 3mm Allen head. Let's get this opened up. Just one screw removes it from the body. Let's open up the actual housing. You have to make sure that it goes into that socket. Then you can lift it up. And also safety glasses. This is the best time to have them on before you open it up. I open it up without the safety glasses. I should have had the safety glasses on. Never open up hot either. That's pretty obvious. For one thing, you're going to burn your hands. The other thing is, the hotter these bulbs are, then the more likely something could explode. They're probably not going to explode just sitting there like that. They're going to be more likely to explode when they're being turned on and off. Now, I am pressing a little silver release button. Maybe hard to see in the video, but maybe not. Little silver button, lever. You press it all the way down, then I can pull the bulb up. I'm just going to do that now. A little hard to wiggle out of the metal that I've got here. This metal's kind of tight down here. There was some metal wires right in here, just a little bit hard a minute ago to pull that out, but there you go. This is the heat sink, obviously, and here is a 3mm screw, and this is what I'm going to loosen to pull the bulb out, or if I'm putting the bulb in, this is where I'm going to tighten it. Another thing, if I try to pull, even if I loosen this up, and I try to pull the bulb out, maybe the bulb's going to be tight. So, not too hard to figure out. Just take a flathead screwdriver and kind of pry this open just a little bit, just to pull this out. Don't do it too much, or you're going to break the heat sink back here. And another thing, always make sure your wires are tight. There's a Phillips head screw, and I can wiggle this wire. It's good and tight. Any type of electronic device, you want to make sure you have tight wires, tight connections, nothing loose. So this is tight, that's good. So if I were putting the bulb in right now, I would open up the housing like I just did. I would take the HBO 100 bulb, I would loosen this up, I'd pry this open, I would shove the bulb in. By the way, there's a bigger side and a smaller side. Don't worry about which goes where, it only goes one way. You'll figure it out. This is the smaller side, only the smaller end goes in there. Okay, On this bulb for the HBO 100, there is no orientation. Contrary to the HBO 50 watt, they actually have something that has to be oriented a certain way, but we won't worry about it on this because this is an HBO 100. So I'm going to insert this bulb back through that wire. It's a little hard, but there it went in. And now I'm going to press down on that lever, and now I'm going to seat that bulb. Let up on the lever, and I wiggle it. It's good and seated just fine. Here's all those centering screws, 5 centering screws. So this is what we're going to be doing whenever we're trying to center the bulb. These bulbs are not pre-centered. So if I just take and move this, I could actually see some movement happening here. Here, you might be able to see it in the video. Not really. You can't, because it was not moving the bulb, it was moving the reflector behind it, parabolic reflector behind it. So each one of them moves something. Now here we're moving the bulb up and down a little bit. And let's see what this one does. So all of these are the adjustments. This is the collector lens. If you notice, it's moving the collector lens in and out. That is for focusing the light. That's really fine-tuning things. A very slight adjustment here will make the difference between a good image or a poor image or even no image. Or you might see that you got your field of view and all this side is all bright and there's nothing on this side. Well, do some adjustments on your bulb, because what you ideally want is your full field of view to have a consistent bright image, fluorescence image. You really don't want dark spots in different areas. So let's go ahead and put the housing back on. 3mm Allen head goes right here. Make sure it's in that socket. There, just now went in. Rotate it reasonably finger tight. Okay. By the way, I have an IR cutoff filter on the on this part, so that's cutting off the IR light going in. That's cutting out heat, damaging heat to my unit. Okay. Let's look at the back, and I've also got another IR filter, cutoff filter here. While we've got this out, let's look at our slider. This is a viewing aid. So if I pull it towards me, I'm diverting the light, and I can look inside here, and I can center my bulb. When I'm done, I push it that way, diverts the light all the way through. So if you're not getting any image, I can't see any fluorescence. Yeah, because you've got it pulled out. You've got to push it back in. Okay, so let's mount this. Not too hard, but it does help to have another person do this. I'm going to loosen it a little first to make sure it's just right. Make sure it's all straight. And just tighten it enough that it's good and snug and it won't move. Okay, so we've gone over the lamp housing, the power supply. We've talked about the heat sink on it. We've talked about the lever that you got to press to release. Talk about wearing safety glasses. Talked about these openings, that these are for centering. And we've talked about the collector lens that you've got to move in and out to do final. And we've talked about this viewing aid that you got to pull out when you're centering your bulb and push back in whenever you're done. One thing about centering the bulb, you can do it this way. The other way, you can just take a look and start adjusting these. I usually do it that way if I'm in a hurry. I'm like, well, I'll usually pull this out and I'll do some quick adjustments to get it reasonable. And then I'll just do some more fine tuning with the 3mm Allen head. I'll start looking at it and I'll start turning things until I get it really bright. Whenever I get it bright, at the brightest spot, that's where it's going to be aligned. And I also look into the eyepieces, and there again, you got your field of view. If everything's all bright on one and dark on the other, it's not centered. So it's a little bit hard, but I'll try to look into the eyepieces. And I've got a long enough arm, I can reach my collector lens. So I can look in and see and adjust this collector lens at the same time. It's really easier if you've got another person back there and while you're looking in here and somebody else is over here and you're like, turn, no, stop, right there, no, go back, you know, do that for all of them. So I think you get the point about how to do the centering. Okay, let's look at other things. We have 3 sliders on this side. The rear one is a shutter slider, and it can hold optional filters. I always like to install a blank blocker in one, a coin or something. This is just a good way to stop the fluorescence light. It blocks it. So in this case, I've got something in this position. Another thing, make sure you're in an open position when you're trying to do fluorescence. If you're blocking it, you're going to block all your light. That's obvious. Okay, you have the aperture and the field diaphragm. These are 2 sliders. You need to start with having both of these open. Pushing them up, they're open. If they're closed down, you're not going to get an image because you're blocking all the light. And you also have 3mm Allen head sockets at the end that allow you to center these. This one's screwed in a little bit. Let me close this. If you start to look at the iris and you do this, you can see it moving around. You could just do a little pre-centering by just holding it up to the wall and see where you're at, making sure things are not like way off. But you can also center whenever you are looking at your image. You're not going to see the aperture iris. You will see the field iris whenever you're looking in the eyepieces. You don't have to use these irises, but depending on your specimen and your application, you might want to use them to fine-tune your image. For example, let's say you've got a really bright background. You don't want a bright background in fluorescence, just like dark field. You want the darkest, blackest background with the brightest fluorescing signal coming up that you're looking at. So turning down these irises, not all the way is going to block it, but just a little bit, you start to darken that background. You're also increasing that depth of field, and this can be useful if you're not seeing everything in focus. So let's go over this concept again. This is really important. This is an iris. I'm going to close it down a little bit. Closing it down darkens, let's just say, my background. My fluorescing signal comes out at me a little bit brighter. But more importantly, depth of field. Got a little petri dish here. So let's say there's a specimen here. What is depth of field? Depth of field is how much of a distance in here I can see in focus. And the higher power magnification, the less depth of field you've got. But if you close that iris down, you're going to have a little better depth of field. So in other words, you might see the cell, but part of the nucleus is not in focus. So you got to turn that knob and you got to see more. Then you can get part of the nucleus in focus, but something else goes out of focus. So that's the hassle with depth of field. As I said, the higher power magnification, more of a problem. But keep in mind your irises can help with that a little bit. You do lose numerical aperture of your system when you do that, so you're going to lose some resolving power. So there's always trade-offs in optics. You want a higher numerical aperture, then you're generally going to have a lower depth of field, less depth of field, and closer to the specimen and a little harder to get something in focus. Whereas if you really open these up and you get more, if I open them up all the way, then I got less depth of field, and I've also got more spherical aberration issues, just trade-offs there. Anyway, let's get into dichroic filter. This is really the heart of your fluorescence microscope. Okay, so the way I've got the microscope positioned, it would be excitation filter. You're exciting from your light source going into, actually I've got it turned this way. This is your excitation filter. This is your emissions filter. So we're going to be exciting through the excitation filter, which in this case is, well, in this case it's a UV, it's 365 nanometer, and it's going to be emitting, this is a long pass, it's going to be emitting at 420 nanometers. Let's look at another one here. This is the one I like to use a lot. This is a GFP FITSI. So this is exciting at a 450 nanometer. So let's go over a little bit more about dichroic filters, and also the other part of the heart of your microscope is your objective lens. Zeiss has newer model frames, but you're not going to get any better fluorescence out of them if you're using the same dichroic filter and the same objective lens. These are interchangeable. I mean, you could go out and buy a $6,000 Zeiss Plan Apochromat 1.4 numerical aperture objective lens, and you could put it on this frame that's an older frame. Or you could also take an older objective lens and put it on a brand new Zeiss. They're completely interchangeable, but they are what's really going to give you the image quality. These frames, you're not going to get any difference out of this frame versus going out and buying a brand new frame. The optics in here are going to be generally the same quality level, and really the design for the most part too. There's very little, if you're comparing the higher grade like like an observer, Zeiss Observer, which is a little newer model than this one, this being the Axiovert 200, you're not going to see any difference. There's not going to be any. This is going to cause you, this is going to be your difference, the dichroic filter. Okay, let's, so we've gone through the filters, we've looked at what's the excitation, we've looked at what's the emission, we've talked about band passes. Band passes is going to be that narrow band. Remember, this is a 450 to 490 narrow band. Actually, it's a wide band. And that's what's going to be exciting your light. And you've also got a dichroic mirror inside. Holding it this way, you can see the dichroic mirror. Okay, I wanted to jump right into doing some fluorescence. Until now, we've been taking a look at how to set up the fluorescence on this inverted Zeiss Axiovert 200 microscope. Let's actually see what this does. So I've turned this power supply on. I've left everything on for about 45 minutes now. This has reached a constant temperature, which means the wavelength spectra is constant, and it's per the design of what I want to be able to excite my specimens. Looking at the power supply, my temp button is off, which that's good. That means it's not overheated. Safety button is green, lamp is green. We do provide different types of 100 HBO 100 power supplies. This is just one style, so don't get too asphyxiated on just this one. Bottom line, it's a power supply for the HBO 100. HBO 100 bulb is in, everything's turned on. I've done my alignment of the bulb. I've used the 3mm Allen head. I'll put on my safety glasses here for a while, because remember, this is always good to have as you're starting things. We have a green excitation. This is 546 nanometer Tritzy excitation, and it's emitting at a red, longer wavelength. And I'm just going to do some slight focusing adjustments here. I'm going to do some moving around of the slide. I don't have to touch it much because we're under a magnification. Any little touch might get it too far out. Okay, so that's the 546 nanometer excitation Tritzy. Let's click the reflector cube button. Oh, it's a little hard to see, but okay, now this is the GFP FITSI excitation. This is the 450 to 490 nanometer bandpass range. And we have a blue light. We're fluorescing at a green light, which is a longer wavelength than the blue light. One thing I wanted to show for you is, remember we talked about the iris in these. Let's turn this iris down. You can actually see it in the image, and I have it centered. Let's do some centering just to show you how these are done. So see, that moves around. It's going to be centered right about there, but you're not centering it on the screen, you're centering it in your eyepieces. We don't really want this all the way down. However, the farther down we turn it, the more depth of field we've got. I'm gonna open it up a little bit more. And the other one, you don't actually see the aperture. You don't actually see the aperture diaphragm in the screen, but you do see a darkening. So this can be used to darken your background. In this case, we have a fairly bright fluorescing specimen and a dark background, but sometimes you have autofluorescence, sometimes you have a screen that you don't want in your background that's bright, and you can use these. Okay, so that is about it. Let's do some adjustments and just see how some things change. This is the collector lens. There are some changes. I wanted to show you how, if you start to change the alignment of your bulb. Okay, I turned not even 10 degrees rotation, and I blew my whole image. And my intensity here is way down. So this is to demonstrate to you, if you don't have a good alignment, you may not get a good image, or you may not get any image at all. Let's just turn that. You can see how much I'm turning, just a little bit, very little bit. Look at the difference that makes. If I turn it too much, go the other way. So do your adjustments of this bulb. There again, you can pull this out. You can look into here and do some centering. As you noticed, when I pull this out, I lose my image because I'm cutting and blocking my image and taking it out through this eye port. So you push it back in, the image, the excitation light is able now to pass. This is a shutter. Remember, I had a blocker in here, so I can block all the light. I can open up the light. Okay, I just wanted to take a break to show you this fluorescence on this microscope. Now we can go back to looking at some more features on how to set up everything. Okay, let's take a look now at the reflector cube turret. That holds our reflector cubes. We're going to remove this from the frame. We begin by using the 3mm Allen head. We insert it at this little opening. Now, don't unscrew this all the way. The idea is just to unscrew it just enough that it's loose. And the other thing, depending on where your low position XY rod is, move your rod out because you need a little space in here to pull this out. So I've loosened this up, and now I can push it out. This is the reflector cube turret. And remember, we were talking about that white line. So position number 1 I would have is bright field. Bright field, DIC, phase contrast. The others are going to be for fluorescence. So like in this case, DAPI is number 2, FITC is number 3, rhodamine, which is also TRITC, is number 4. Number 5, depending on how it's configured, could be something for DIC or maybe not. Could be open. So what we do is we rotate it and we see from that white line what is properly engaged at that time. This word that says reflector on the motorized button, you can press them and it will go one way or the other way, or you can just manually reach up there and turn it. Now let's open this up. So there's tabs. There's little plastic tabs here. So I'm just going to spread them apart, and there, it opens up. And let's take a look. First of all, these are blank blockers. I like to have these on because when you're doing fluorescence and you're rotating, okay, I got UV, DAPI, FITC, TRITC, rhodamine, and all of a sudden there's nothing there. I don't want that light to be shining in here because it's unfiltered light. So I like to have a blank blocker in place. Okay, now let's look at how the cubes go in. So these are called push and click cubes. So you angle them up and they lift right out. That's your excitation part, the filter. Push them in at an angle, push, click. You don't really have to worry about having them in backwards, because if you had them in the wrong way, they'll be up too high, and this cover's not going to work. But let's show you the right way. The right way is where the emissions filter, you should see a filter at the very bottom. The open part is going to be at the top. So you do want to get them in there the right way the first time. Let's put the cover back on. And they just snap in place. Make sure these tabs, a little bit more snapping here. There, now that little pin snapped in place properly. Okay, and remember this is the excitation light coming in, so I know the orientation. It's not going to be this way, it's going to be this way. It has to hit the excitation filter. These are on a little dovetail railing, so I line up that rail. You might have to go to the opposite side to take a look at it to make sure the rails are lined up, and just push it all the way in until it clicks. Once it clicks, take your 3mm Allen head and tighten it up. Just tighten a little bit finger tight. Don't go too much, just a little bit. It's nice and snug in there. It's not going anywhere. And then you can easily rotate. So that's the dichroic filter cube turret. Now, let's look at other things. Let's say you have DIC on this microscope. This is where you're going to have an analyzer slider at. This currently is just a blank, but if this is if there's an analyzer slider in here, you're not going to get fluorescence if you have that engaged. So that's just one thing to remember. Why am I not getting fluorescence? A lot of things to look at. Maybe I got my analyzer engaged here. If nothing else, it's going to severely degrade your fluorescing image for being in there. So a lot of things you've got to make sure of when you do these, when you do fluorescence. And one other thing, sometimes these have internal prisms for the camera, and when I do fluorescence, I always want all of my light going to the eyepieces. I don't want any light, I don't want to do any sharing of my light to this camera port. It's just, I don't have enough fluorescence light to begin with. Usually your fluorescing signal is rather weak, and you want the best, brightest image. So don't share it with the port. So in this case, I've got buttons for the camera. Make sure that you have 0 light here, 100% light here. And on the Axiovert 200, it's also going to tell you on your LCD screen where your settings are at. Well, that's basically it. So as a general summary here of what we've just done, we've taken a look at fluorescence on a Zeiss Axiovert 200 inverted fluorescence microscope. Thank you for watching this video, and please click that like button if you benefited from it, and if you'd like to see more about Zeiss and Olympus fluorescence microscope, then please click the subscribe button. Thank you.